Every so often, science produces some world-changing things. Sometimes there's foods whose divinity rivals that of the golden apple itself. Sometimes it's a beverage that exceeds all others before it, and occasionally it's a supplement that makes you a demigod among men. Regardless of what they are, however, as soon as the federal government sees its people having fun without cigarettes, high fructose corn syrup, or low-grade beer, they intervene and these substances get banned. Banned, but not forgotten. And in today's edutainment video, I'd like to sit down with you and discuss 3 of these gifts that have been lost to time, all of which achieved their own greatness and were subsequently taken off store shelves in their own unique way. And our first banned substance actually gets its start, and as is fairly common with many legends, during the Great Depression. In the year 1938, the US government passed the General Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, a collection of laws meant to make store shelves safer. And as a young entrepreneur, I learned about this law when the Fed shut down my Rice Krispie stand when the general public found out they were like 50% sawdust by volume. And by the way, in case anyone is wondering, the limit's about 40% sawdust before people start to notice the change in flavor, and 60% before they stop believing the whole made with organic ingredients thing. And believe it or not, this law isn't just there to keep young venture capitalists like myself down. It also banned red dye 3, which had been proven to cause thyroid tumors in rats. And to be clear, I'm not saying red dye 40 is great, but I'll take kids eating sweet and sour chicken and having panic attacks over getting cancer any day of the week. The reason I mention this act is because one of the things it directly bans is the sale of any candy that has embedded in it a toy or trinket, which apparently didn't include the tin toys they put in the old Cracker Jack boxes, or the copy of Chex Quest I got with my cereal when I was a kid. And I kid you not, they are packaged next to the popcorn/cereal and not inside of it. Which we all know is a filthy lie, but I'm willing to look past that as Chex Quest rules. But what I'm not willing to look past is that this law is why we can't have Kinder Surprises. First produced in 1974, most kids who don't live in America recognize the chocolate by its egg-shaped exterior and its yellow yolk plastic interior hiding a toy you have to assemble inside. And by the way, if you think IKEA furniture sucks to assemble, the last time I tried to put a Kinder Surprise together for my niece, the little Smurf toy inside had like 4 pages of instructions, and it was 20 minutes before I was having full-on Vietnam flashbacks about the original pre-high grade kits from the 90s.
Level 4, 3 days.
Yet, despite these toys basically being the same thing you get in a McDonald's Happy Meal, these chocolates are considered contraband and aren't allowed in America. And not that this stopped anybody, however. Back in the day, someone living in Buffalo, New York could jump in their car, drive to Toronto, grab 100 of them from the local Loblaws, pay for them with tire money, then drive back and eat them all on their couch while watching Real Steel and pretending the toys inside were the robots in the movie. And that was all well and good until 2011 when the government decided that American children were too stupid and fat to be trusted with these things without inhaling the entire candy, wrapper and all, and then choking on them. So to combat these dangerous candies, they put a flat $2,500 fine on every egg that comes over the border. And to give you an idea of how crazy and insane that is, the current fine if you get caught with crack can be as little as $1,000. No joke, the federal government thinks that Kinder eggs are more dangerous for you than crack. Thank you, Reagan. Funnily enough though, this ban doesn't just affect Kinder eggs, as back in the early 90s, Nestle tried their hand at their own version called Wonder Ball, which lasted until about 1997 when they got lobbied against for the exact same thing. In case you're wondering why I find this funny, I kinda gotta give you a hypothetical to explain it. Let's say that hypothetically you owned a massive international corporation. And let's say people on your sales team were taking saleswomen, dressing them up as nurses, and sneaking them into hospitals. Then these saleswomen nurses were going into maternity wards and gaslighting new mothers into believing that their breast milk was inferior to the Nestle baby powder with the rabbit on it. Finally, let's imagine that practices just like these led to the death of over 11 million babies during the course of like 50 years due to poor nutrition. If this was you, you'd hopefully be out of a job and facing a firing squad. But no, not Nestle. If you're them, then doing that gets your CEO promoted to the head of the World Economic Forum. And despite being able to get away with literal baby genocide, even Nestle can't sneak toys into candy eggs. Frickin' wild. Alright, moving on before I have an aneurysm. Not to brag or anything, but the mid-2000s was absolutely a cultural landmark for America. Scene was creating a Pavlovian response in young men that made them attracted to women with more product in their hair than 1950s housewives. YouTube Nightcore was in its heyday, as was skate culture, and Four Loko was turning parties into future court evidence. And for those of you who weren't around when the original Four Loko was on the streets, the drink was the stuff of legends. If you drank one, you were gonna have a good time. 2, and suddenly you want to fight children in a Chuck E. Cheese ball pit. 3, and suddenly it's cool to light your ex's patio furniture on fire while listening to copyright-free rock and roll. And nobody really knows what happened when you drank 4, because most people were dead from suicide by cop before they got that far. Now, this may not surprise you, but Four Loko was conceived by 3 frat bros. Because, of course it was. Meet Jeff Wright, Jason Freeman, and Chris Hunter, who in 2005 said, "Hey man, these sorority parties don't seem like they have enough bad ideas yet. What if we increase this by a factor of like 4? And thus, Four Loko was born. Aww. Actually, I'm just kidding. The name actually came from the first attempt at the stuff, which was made with only 4 ingredients. They were caffeine, taurine, guarana, and wormwood. And if that last ingredient seems a bit weird to you, that's because wormwood is the primary ingredient in absinthe, a roughly 100 proof alcohol known to cause hallucinations. Because, heavily intoxicated people with enough stimulants in their blood to give an elephant a heart attack definitely need to be hallucinating. That's smart. Luckily, unlike its Swiss spirit relative, the original formula did not share the same hallucinogenic properties, as it was only 12 proof. It also failed miserably, which sent our 3 entrepreneurs back to the drawing board. And when they returned, they brought with them their new Four Loko formula. Now larger, covered in a camo pattern, and sporting a big boy size with twice the amount of alcohol. Unsurprisingly, it was a hit, and Freeman has been on the record as saying, "The moment the drinks hit the shelves, it was pretty much immediate. We couldn't make it fast enough." And the sales numbers actually justify this, as by 2010, Four Loko was the party drink, with an annual revenue hitting a whopping $100 million. Unfortunately for me, however, I never saw this heyday, as I was in Germany at the time, doing stuff. And when I got back, Four Loko was just gone, off the store shelves completely, as if they had never been there to begin with. Apparently, while I was gone, doing stuff, like Icarus before it, Four Loko had flown too close to the sun and suffered a similar fate. You see, while everyone had spent most of the late 2000s having fun with the drink, some people were having a bit too much fun. There were reports of hallucination-fueled nude break-ins? What? And many colleges were banning the party drink. Even worse, parents began to sue Four Loko, claiming the deaths of their children were directly linked to consuming the beverage. Which is weird, as this is the only time in history children had ever been influenced by a product marketed to adults. The final nail in the coffin, believe it or not, was not child death lawsuits, but when a New York assemblyman named Felix Ortiz put forth legislation to get the drink banned. To his credit though, before moving forward, he did agree to test the product, and if I'm reading this right, he, under a doctor's supervision, drank 2 cans of the stuff before immediately throwing up and blacking out. Yeah, that would do it. So with tension from the FTC mounting and several lawsuits underway, the creators decided the party drink wasn't worth the headache and pulled it off store shelves. However, the drink soon came back, just, without any of the magic. New Four Loko is still sold today, just without any of the stimulants, which is kind of like the class clown coming back to school on Ritalin. Sure, he's still there, he's just not fun anymore. But here's the thing. Much like Kinder Surprise, Four Loko is still sold in America, albeit in a lesser capacity. This next thing I'm going to mention was at one point actually illegal because one of the ingredients got banned by the FDA. As far as supplements go, pre-workouts as they stand may be the last definition of the wild west of things you can put in your body, as apparently they do not have to be FDA approved before they can be marketed to the general public. Which means, as long as all the ingredients are already FDA approved, manufacturers can basically go nuts with their cocktails. Which is exactly what happened with our last banned product, Jacked. Perhaps the most infamous pre-workout on the planet, Jack's origin and ban have become the stuff of legends. To give you an idea of how notorious this stuff was, the original story I was told back in 2020 while I was lifting in an airplane hangar in the middle of the Alaskan tundra went kinda like this. USP Labs, the manufacturer of Jacked, made a pre-workout with FDA-approved ingredients. Then, when it hit store shelves, they secretly moved the manufacturing to Mexico and started putting crystal meth in the formula without telling anyone. When this was eventually found out, Interpol sent a team in and destroyed the entire warehouse before arresting everyone involved. And now that sounds crazy, right? Actually, believe it or not, there's some truth to that story. Just like, not most of it, like a little bit of truth. Jack's original formula was actually pretty straightforward. 1 part caffeine for the stimulation, a bit of arginine alpha ketoglutarate for increased energy production, a dash of creatine monohydrate because hey, why not? And my personal favorite, beta-alanine, which some of you may know, it's actually pretty much useless, but I love overdosing on this stuff, but I live for that feeling of ants crawling under my skin and giving my muscles tiny little love nibbles. And as I said, these ingredients are pretty standard stuff you can find at any GNC. Well, except for the final ingredient, called 1,3-dimethyma... Man, I gotta stop putting these hard to pronounce words in my videos. It's called DMAA. Now, here's the thing. DMAA is often described as legal meth and is one of the original ingredients in Adderall back in the day. And you know what? I see the vision. As the last time they put me on this stuff, I was surviving on like 800 calories a day, sleeping about 2 hours a night, and if I drank an energy drink while on it, I'd spend like 4 hours on the floor trying not to die of a heart attack. Needless to say, DMAA is great, and so of course it was officially banned in 2012 by the FDA. And as a result, USP Labs had to change the formula and destroy $8 million worth of product. Hence the whole rumor about the feds raiding the compound. It's still around, but with the DMAA gone, it's just another generic pre-workout you could take. Totally void of soul. Before I wrap up this video, let's give a round of applause to these 3 substances. These 3 larger-than-life foods, drinks, pre-workouts that we will never see again. They're gone, but their memory lives on in Reddit and 4chan posts everywhere. Now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna go crack open a Kinder Egg, scoop 40 grams of Jacked in with a crushed up Adderall, and mix it with a 4 Loko I made from grape Kool-Aid and Everclear for that ultimate white boy jungle juice. Tell you what, lean ain't got nothing on this. Later. So, in regards to when my physician had me on Adderall, I had a physician up in Alaska who got arrested for Medicaid fraud, like, couple years after I was seeing him. And this guy was great. I could walk in and I could just be like, hey man, can I try Viagra today? And the guy would just give me whatever I asked for. Well, one day I asked him for Adderall because, why not? And he gave it to me. And, I'm sitting here sleeping like 2 hours a night. I would get up like every 30 minutes to take a shower. I wasn't eating anything. And I would crash for the entire weekend. Like I would literally sleep from like Saturday afternoon to Sunday morning. Well, I finally went to the guy and I was like, hey, are these side effects common with Adderall? And he looked at my dose and he goes, how much do you weigh? I was like 170 pounds. He goes, oh, that's why. I got you on a dose meant for a 600-pound guy. How am I still alive?